The law of resonance is a broadly accepted principle in various scientific fields, like hydromechanics, nuclear physics, electrical engineering, mechanical science, and many more. They are bound to the analysis of the law of resonance. The law says that manifestations can only occur when two objects are in resonance with each other. So for example, if we have a frequency, a tone basically, and a tuning fork to receive the signal, the tuning fork can only act on that signal if it is in resonance with that specific frequency. If not, they never get into contact with each other and no manifestation can happen. As humans, all of our perceptions root in the ability of resonance. We know that we are in need of a very specific resonance ability for electromagnetic waves to receive and experience light and sound. And we also know that to every instrument and every human there are limits to our resonance ability. Because of that, we cannot hear ultrasound and we cannot see ultraviolet, only because we don't have the resonance ability for those stimuli. Other beings possess these resonance abilities. Bees can see ultraviolet, dogs can hear ultrasound, and bats even produce and receive themselves ultrasound for their echolocation. Every perception and every contact we humans have and experience is therefore dependent on the resonance ability. But the critical point is the translation from this obvious and broadly accepted physical context into the metaphysical realm, where at first it is not so obvious to us humans that these laws do not discriminate between the physical and metaphysical world. So every human being can and will always experience only exactly that for which he possesses the resonance abilities. And this not only means physically and sense physiologically, but this includes all forms of human experience, all the conscious and unconscious assessments and interpretations of reality, everything. If we continue this train of thought, this means that human beings do not, as most people believe, live together in an objective world, in the world. It rather shows that every single individual lives alone in his or her own world, that he never experienced and grasped anything else but his own unique world. He cannot know anything else but his own world. Let's illustrate that with a simple example. If we take a receiver, put him in a room, and calibrate it on very high frequencies, this will mean that this receiver now receives all sorts of signals from mainly television and radio transmissions, with a broad variety of channels and sources, but only when they have been transmitted on very high frequencies. This will become the world of this receiver, the fundament of his understanding of the world. He has no idea about all the other frequencies around him, because he has not the resonance ability for them. Now we place a second receiver right next to him and calibrate that one on medium wave. This receiver will also receive a bunch of different signals from a variety of different radio transmissions and others. But again, only when they are precisely in his medium wave range. And now these two receivers are starting to have a conversation with each other. One of them praises a beautiful opera he's listening to right now, and the other one says, "Well, this sounds interesting, but where is this opera he is talking about?" So he plays back and forth through all of his channels, but he does not find it. So he comes to the conclusion, if the other does not play a bad joke with him, he's insane. This guy needs therapy. He's hallucinating. He obviously hears something which does not even exist. There is no opera. It is provable that it does not exist. Now you can imagine how these two start arguing with each other, insult each other, until eventually they start fighting against each other, declare war on each other, because it has to be settled who of them is right, who is telling the truth and who lies. But what we can all do here is realize that every one of us lives in his or her own world. and this world heavily depends on the person's individual resonance ability. It doesn't have anything to do with the one world, the objective world. Even though they are next to each other in the same room and are both receivers, they could never fully understand each other. Now imagine these were humans. Luckily for us, we can understand with the receiver high frequency waves and medium waves, and in contrast to a receiver, we can also perceive visual stimuli like colors, shapes and forms. But our resonance ability has its own limits in all areas. So we cannot know the one world, the objective world. We can only experience and perceive our own subjective world. The world of the individual is determined by his resonance ability, and yet almost everyone believes that his world is the one world. A human cannot and will never know the one world, the real objective world. It is simply not in the realm of possibilities. How could he get to know it if he does not even know the world of the other person right next to him? He cannot get to know it because he cannot simply leave his own world. His world will always be the sum of all his perceived information through his resonance ability, and he will always be alone with that. It cannot be different. So be aware of that the next time you're listening to something or talk to someone who has a very and totally different viewpoint than you. Remind yourself of this principle and understand that your reality and truth might be very different from his. But this does not mean that you are right and he is wrong. It is part of the human experience, and only by accepting the subjectiveness of our own world, we can build bridges to the worlds of others.